Hello and welcome back to American Motherhood, where we explore how society and politics shape the motherhood experience. I'm Bethany, and today I'll be joined by Ohio Senator Dr. Beth Liston to discuss Ohio's proposed paid family leave program. As an HR professional specializing in benefits and leave management, I've seen firsthand how important paid leave can be for families navigating healthcare needs, including growing their families. So I'm especially excited by this topic. But before we dive into Ohio Senate Bill 396, we do need a bit of context because this proposal ties directly to the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act, or FMLA. So FMLA allows eligible workers to take unpaid job-protected leave for things like recovering from a medical condition, caring for a family member, or bonding with a new baby. To qualify, you must meet 3 requirements. You must work for an employer with at least 50 employees within a 75-mile radius, have been there for at least 12 months, and have worked at least 1,250 hours in the past year, which is about 24 hours a week. If you qualify, you can take up to 12 weeks of job-protected leave, which means that your employer must reinstate you to your job or a similar one when you return. But while your job is protected, your pay is not. And that gap is what this proposed state paid family leave program is designed to address. Of course, some employers already offer paid leave benefits through salary continuation programs or short-term disability insurance, but access to paid leave is far less common than many people realize. And regardless of political affiliation, most parents understand this reality. Growing a family requires time, recovery, support, and stability. Paid family leave has become an increasingly important part of that conversation. Future mothers and families deserve thoughtful policy discussions around what support can and should look like. And as citizens, we have the ability to stay informed, follow legislation like Senate Bill 396, and make our voices heard with the representatives elected to serve us. So thank you for being here today. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe to the American Motherhood Podcast, leave us a review, and share it with a friend. Okay, let's dive in. Today, I'm excited to welcome Ohio State Senator Dr. Beth Liston to discuss Senate Bill 396, or paid family leave for the state of Ohio. Democratic Senator Liston proposed this bipartisan bill along with Republican Senator Blessing, which is something we love to see at American Motherhood. Senator Liston, thank you again for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to talk about this issue and this bill, so I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, to kick us off, can you please share the highlights from your background in medicine, your work as an elected official in Ohio, and the role motherhood has played in shaping your perspective on politics?
Yes, Beth Liston. I am a state senator in northern Franklin County. I represent northern suburbs of Columbus. This is my first term in the Senate, but I was previously in the House. I served 3 terms there, and I grew up essentially where I represent. So this is home. I'm an internal medicine and pediatrics physician, and I work at Ohio State and Nationwide Children's, although obviously I'm not talking for them on this podcast. But yeah, I was a doctor for a long time, and I realized that a lot of what I could do to care for people was relatively limited, especially because I do only inpatient work, right? By the time someone's in the hospital, there's so much that went into their health that isn't something I can address in that really acute stay. And so that ultimately brought me into politics and policy, because I think most policy really does have a huge impact on health in ways that maybe aren't always obvious. I did this when, about a decade ago now, and I do have 2 kids. They were, I think, 10 and 12 at the time. So they sort of grew up with politics as sort of a part of my life, and knocking doors was a part of their election cycle over the years. And I think it's really hard to be a mom and not have it shape your perspective on the world and the world that you want to see.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great to give everyone some background as we start talking about this new bill. In my experience, most people don't think about leave benefits until they suddenly need them, whether they're having a baby, they're caring for a parent, or dealing with their own serious medical issue. Can you share a real-world picture of what that looks like for families making decisions right now when many are often left without paid leave and even without job protection?
Yeah, I think you're right. People don't think about this. We all know, I think, that there's a federal policy, right? The FMLA is something that you can take. Mm-hmm. And I think people do sometimes think about the pregnancy policies. But I think most people don't realize that even if you have the ability to take leave, that doesn't mean that you get your salary during that time. And I think that can often come as a big surprise for people. When we introduced this bill, I shared my own story, which, it's a small example, but I was a resident when I had my kiddos. And when my daughter was born, I was given 6 weeks off, but I didn't realize until it happened that I wasn't going to get paid. And my husband was being a stay-at-home dad, so we had one paycheck, and residency pay isn't all that great. So we started really getting behind just because of, having a baby. And I think the end result was my second child. I only stayed out 4 weeks, and I started immediately at a new job because it was right at the end of residency, which I don't think anyone thinks is ideal in terms of the start of motherhood and of, the best way to handle new babies at home. And for me, everything was smooth and perfect, but I didn't have any complications. Whereas I know, a lot of other families do, where they need to take more time because of a health issue with their child, or, they fall behind and they're not able to have others in their family, pick up the financial slack, unfortunately.
I know I have, expecting moms come to me so excited for this next stage in life. And then when we start talking about what FMLA actually is for them, and I'm fortunate enough, always where I've worked, we've had short-term disability, but that is completely based on your employer and their decisions and whether or not that's offered to you, or if you're lucky, then the employer is providing that to you. But again, that's often 6 weeks. It's a portion of your salary, not whole salary, and completely separate from that FMLA leave. And not to mention, not all employers are required to follow FMLA leave. There are so many factors there. And I guess my point really is that I wish that women would ask these questions earlier than they do, so that, yes, we can start planning, but so that we can start making these changes at the state level, much like Senate Bill 396.
Yeah, and we're talking about for the birth of a child, and obviously there are other places this applies, but even for the birth of a child, I would also say we want fathers to have time and flexibility too. We want adopted parents to have some time and flexibility. I think if we really want to be a state that people can, thrive and raise their families and have those experiences, we need to be thinking about how to make sure people have the support that they need.
Absolutely. Okay, so great segue. So who all would be covered under the state insurance plan, and what kinds of life situations qualify?
So it is based on FMLA. So everyone would be covered under this. Basically, if you're employed, you would be included. Now, there are circumstances in which if your employer has significantly better benefits that employer can opt out of this program, and the employee wouldn't be part of it. We don't want to create a ceiling. We want to make sure everyone has a floor that has, you have a benefit available to you. Obviously, there are employers that are doing more than this. Wonderful. But every employee would be covered. And then employers with 15 or more employees would also participate and pay into the system that covers everybody.
Okay, that's great. And so for the situations that qualify, obviously, yes, we've talked about giving birth, but it's also there if you need to take leave to care for your child or a parent, and to reserve that job protection if you need to step away from your role for a little bit to care for your loved ones.
Yes. So I think many moms are often in a sandwich situation, and that generation where they have little ones that rely on them, but their parents are also getting older and may have health needs that require time with them, whether they have a new diagnosis or whether they have a fall or a hospitalization. I think a lot of people are in that caregiver role. And for those situations, this would also enable them to have flexibility to make sure that their parents and, people for whom they otherwise provide care are supported, have that financial assurances from this program.
So what does this bill fundamentally change about how Ohio workers experience taking leave, understanding that right now they're presented with a need, whether it's an emerging need that they can plan for, or if it's an emergency and they're not able to plan for it, but they're wondering, how am I going to continue to pay my bills? And will my job even be here when I can come back? So what exactly does this bill change for Ohio workers?
So this changes the salary that they can receive during this time. So basically, if someone is eligible for leave through things like FMLA, unpaid leave, this provides a percentage of someone's paycheck so that they have that financial security. People earning up to $70,000 a year, they would get 80% of their wages during the leave. So that if you need to take leave for an emergency, for a birth, for an illness, then you can still receive those wages during that time. And then after 70,000, like higher than that, it's prorated. So there's still money received, but it's you don't receive your entire salary, but hopefully enough to make sure that people can live and make ends meet while they're dealing with other things going on in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so can you walk us through how the program would actually work? Who pays in, how the benefits are administered?
Yeah, and obviously some of the specifics will be in the rules that would come after the bill would go into place, right? So the law is going to require the program to be created and it's administered by the state. So those kind of details would still be determined. However, I will say it's like an insurance fund of sorts that people pay into every paycheck that is a pool of money that would pay for those wages when people needed to take that leave. So it's essentially about $4 every 2 weeks for someone making the average salary in Ohio, which is, roughly $70,000. And employers would pay the same. So, everyone contributes just a small amount. And then if you qualify and need to take a leave, that's where the benefits would come from. It's administered through the state, but the details of how that would work would be put into place after the bill passed.
So much like, funds like unemployment, where you as both an employee and your employer are funding this insurance program to prepare for the future need.
Yeah, exactly. With the small caveat that businesses with less than 15 employees, they are not paying into it. It's larger businesses that are paying into it.
And how was that decision made, that threshold of 15?
I think it was just taking a look at the intent of the bill, which is not that someone who has, a small, LLC that otherwise doesn't have a number of employees is burdened per se. We wanted to make sure that it was something that was feasible for businesses as well. And obviously, if you only have a handful of employees, the benefits offered is often a little bit less than we don't want to prohibit people from opening and starting small businesses and with fees per se. We just want to make sure most Ohioans have this benefit available.
Absolutely. So along the same lines, the bill proposes up to 14 weeks of paid leave. How was that length of time determined?
Yeah, so right now about 14 other states have put into place a program like this. 14 is sort of in the middle of the range. The bill we're putting forth also allows people, if they have a second event, if there's another major problem that occurs that they need to take more time, then they can actually apply up till 18 weeks. So they can get an additional 4 weeks.
Oh, that's great.
But, somewhere between 12 and 18 weeks is a pretty typical range of paid leave. So this was, chosen for that purpose. It's possible that as the bill moves through committees, there could be some adjustments, especially as more people look and figure out what Ohio's employers feel comfortable with and what finances look like. But that's where it is at the moment.
What's deemed to be reasonable, right, for everyone. Are there other specific state programs that you were looking at, whether you wanted to take something from those or avoid something, right? Like lessons that you learned from those states?
I think the concept and the idea is pretty universally supported. I think the lessons drawn are more about the coalitions that are involved and really care about the bill. And quite frankly, everyone does. I mean, there's bipartisan coalitions that have looked at this issue across the country. And so trying to build those, I think, has been more the lessons. It doesn't, I would say as a Democrat, this is something that we've felt strongly about and talked frequently about. But this model of how to do this has been something that I think has brought in more from across the aisle. And I think that's important to try to have buy-in from everyone. So I think it's relatively quick. It's been a couple of years that the states have really started to adopt this. So I don't know that I have long-term takeaways on the specifics that would adjust the policy. This bill is sort of mid-range on all things from what other states are looking at.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, and I think this is probably a good time to mention, too, that paid family leave has been proposed in Ohio before and just hasn't crossed the finish line. So is there anything else that feels politically or culturally different now outside of, following other states who have enacted a similar plan?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things. First of all, I think that many things happen after conversations really develop. You have to say things over and over and over and over and over again, sometimes at the State House, for people to really understand how important it is and to hear that message. And so I think we're at a point where we've been talking about it for long enough that most people are like, yeah, of course we should do that. Instead of, the first time something's mentioned, it takes a little bit of time for people to come to that conclusion. And then there's also there's a strong coalition of organizations that put this together and are advocating. And I think having a coalition of advocates really makes a difference. It includes organizations that work for families that might need this type of leave, but it also includes Adoption Network. It includes Teachers Association. And, in some states, it's included Right to Life groups. So groups that don't always come together on policy, I'm hoping will come together on this one. And already there are dozens of organizations that are actively working for this bill. And then I think that we're starting to see business communities understand how important these types of things will be, being able to offer good benefits to people because there's so much need in terms of workforce within the state.
Going back to those groups, do any in particular come to mind to get involved to support this effort?
There's actually a website that I can share. It's called timetocareohio.org. And there you can go and you can see an FAQ about the bill. And you could also see who the coalition members are. I think one of the more powerful things that people do, and the coalition helps with as well, is sharing their personal stories. Because I told you, mine, but mine is relatively benign. When we introduced this bill, someone came and talked about their experience when their child was born preterm, right? And how that impacted their finances. And it was an unexpected event, an unexpected real challenge. And I think people face those situations every day. Everyone at some point in their life will have an unexpected stressor on their ability to work. And some of those won't fit this, but many will, and make sure that there's some security there. So take your story, share it with others. And I think that's a big way to advocate for change in policy.
That's great. Yes, we've been exploring that in other conversations as well as, sometimes whatever the cause or issue is can feel overwhelming as just one voice wanting to get involved and make an impact. And so we've been talking about finding those groups and those coalitions to join and just amplify their efforts as well.
Yeah, they have a newsletter and,
perfect.
And there's a way to join on the website. So, and really anytime there's press or media on the issue, someone coming and sharing what it means to them can be really impactful. Obviously, meeting with your legislators, also impactful. If I represent you, wonderful. You know that I support this issue. But, I'm sure your audience is broader than that. And so other state legislators be happy to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, so getting back to your other point, this is not just a family issue. From a business perspective, paid leave can be understood as workforce infrastructure and talent retention rather than as a cost. So I guess when did that shift happen behind the scenes, or was it a shift? Is that just perceived?
I see it that way. I think we are in the process of the shift. I don't know that everyone does yet. Certainly, the coalition's been working with the NFIB and the chamber. They, at this point, are neither for nor against this. We're hoping they'll come out for it, especially the NFIB, which is small businesses, because obviously we're intending to not create a burden for those that really aren't or may feel more of a burden from this bill. But it just provides so much protection for their employees that I feel like it is pro-business. I actually have a small business. My husband and I have a board game store, and we have 3 full-time employees. And I can say we would certainly want our employees to be able to, maintain their financial stability if they needed to take a leave. But I would say it would be difficult to both pay a replacement and the person on leave, right? Because we only have 3 employees. The margins aren't huge. It's not, so I, from a small business perspective, knowing that this program would exist so that my employee would be supported, but also I would not be in the position to try to figure out how to financially manage doing right by the employee while also filling the role. So I hope that that's something that is resonating, and I can imagine it would be, but I do not yet know that it has. We'll see.
From your perspective, what would it mean for Ohio economically if more women are able to remain in the workforce after childbirth or caregiving events?
Man, I think it would be wonderful economically for Ohio, right? I mean, I'd hear every day the need to develop workforce and retain talent in our state, and from pretty much every industry, how they're really looking to bring more people to their X, whatever that is. And obviously, women are more than half the population. Right. So if you don't have policies that make it such that women can stay in the workforce, you're really, hamstringing the state and undercutting the workforce availability for all industries. So good for people, but also good for the state.
Right. So realistically, what happens next with the bill? What hurdles still exist? Are you getting any pushback? And, what are the chances this becomes law this time around?
So anytime a bill is introduced, it has to go through a committee process. During that process, first I'll explain why the bill is important and needed, as will Senator Blessing, who introduced it with me. And the next hearing would be people who are for the bill. Then after that, people are against the bill. And then potentially a vote on the bill. And that's just the committee. Then you have to go through the regular full, the whole body, so the Senate. And then you have to go on the other side and do the same thing in the House. So it's often it can be a long process, especially for, I think, big ideas that, make changes in how we do things in the state, right? It's not a small tweak to an existing law. So that in and of itself can be kind of long. And we are towards the end of the 2-year cycle. It may not feel like it, but every 2 years, there are elections for new state legislators. The Senate's every 4 years, but every 2 years there are new House members. And with every other elections, there are new senators every 2 years as well. So that bills that are introduced from the prior 2-year cycle actually go away, right? So this bill, we've introduced it. The next steps are hearings and hopefully votes, but we're getting to the point where we're probably going on recess in about 2 months and don't tend to come back until after the election in November. Okay. So often what will happen is that a bill that builds momentum may still not pass during this 2-year cycle, but then hopefully is set up to start quickly in the next 2-year cycle in January, with support in place with the coalition, with people that want to come in and speak on it, and hopefully a general understanding of what that bill does throughout most of the legislators so that it can move more quickly in the second time. So I expect to get some hearings on the bill. I don't expect necessarily for it to pass this cycle. We'll see. Like, I've been surprised before, and I've gotten a lot of interest in this bill, a lot of press on it, a lot of people asking and pushing for it. And I think that certainly helps speed up the process. But we'll see. It'll depend some on if there are opponents that come out, and specifically how the business community starts responding to it. That will make it the difference as to whether it passes quickly or it's a continued advocacy over the next year.
So just make sure that I'm understanding that. Would it have to be reintroduced?
Yes, it would have to be reintroduced.
Okay. And so is that something that you and Senator Blessing could do again, or how does that cycle through?
We can do it again and would expect to do again.
Okay, great. And then are you hearing any current opposition to the bill, whether in the legislature or in the business community?
No, I've not heard current opposition to the bill, which is great. Often, however, I wouldn't hear it until after hearings would start on it.
Okay, sure.
And sometimes there may be people who are very opposed to it, but if the bill hasn't started moving yet, they may more advocate in the background with the chair of the committee who decides how quickly the bill moves, rather than more in the open.
Well, I'm really excited to see this progress. I'm going to sign up for the newsletter. I'm going to follow this group and be sure to follow the bill as both a mom who has had to take leave and, as an HR representative, helping others navigate leave. I think that this is really critical and imperative for our families. Senator Liston, thank you so much for joining me and walking us through it. Again, this is just an issue that touches every stage of life, and I think really important to all Ohioans. So thank you for your effort and your work on the bipartisan bill, and we'll be watching it closely.
Thank you so much. I really am grateful to be here, and I appreciate your advocacy.